Hello and welcome to a Which Way Up drawing. We are going to draw rocks, but not those kind of rocks. We are going to draw building stones, this time in Whitby Abbey. First up, I'm going to redraw a building stone and I will put it up in the corner up here. Photograph of the building block I'm going to be drawing, which is a local sandstone in Whitby. This stone is actually in Whitby Abbey. Now, here's the game. You look at these lines. Now, I'll just really roughly draw. We've got lines like this. We've got some lines like this that look, like they meet here. But we've got some lines like this. And then we seem to have some lines like this. So which came first is the question. Now there's a couple of clues here really quickly. First, where these two sets of rocks meet, there is definitely a boundary of some sort. But where these sets of rocks meet, you can't see this bottom part of that boundary. It seems to be gone, which means this one had to come first and then was cut off by the second one. The other hint here is that there's a curved surface, and often, but not always, curved surfaces tend to align like that. They cut down into things and they scour out. Not always, but it is more common. So it is a reasonable assumption that something with a rounded boundary probably has cut off this way. Which means, in fact, our rock is upside down in this picture. And that would be the orientation it was actually laid down in the earth when it started being made. So what I'm going to do is actually draw this in sequence. So what we have is, let's pretend this is our stone, our nice building stone. Now first, I will flip the photo. And you can see what's happened is some nice rocks have laid down like this, settled on the ground at a dipping angle. This is probably from water, as this is a sandstone, and this is a harbor area here in Whitby. So we have the harbor and the river. So this is probably laid down at an angle as the water ebbed and flowed. It kept going. There's lots of it. This doesn't indicate time, of course. These sediments could have been laid down really quickly. They may have been laid down really slowly. We can't really be sure just by looking at the rock. Then what happened is there was a shift, a change, some sort of event that stopped this sediment. So this stopped laying down, and either it just stopped and it got a little topping, its final layer, or possibly something came and eroded away or washed away the top bit. Leaving us with a set of bedding we can see like that. Well, somewhere after that, some new bedding came in, and it's at a slightly different angle. You can see it's a little bit of a steeper, so it would have started over at this edge probably and laid down this way. It could be that there was a little bit of a shift, sort of in direction, maybe a tilt or a dip in the land, or it could be again that this is a sort of riverbed edge, and so something was coming in and out like this and gently laying down the sediment with the current of the water following the lay of the land, as it were. So this new layer came in and kept going. We don't know how much of it there was, but it would have built up on the new surface. And like I say, if it's easier for you to imagine, you can imagine that maybe there was a little bit of a tilt, and so, you know, new soil started getting laid down like that. That happens for a while. And then again, this event stops. And something changes and shifts, and for some reason, some of it's eroded again. But this time the little erosion surface is here. Again, this could have been simply exposure that eroded the surface, combined with some water or wind. Now, you can see I should have actually put in more of the rest of what would have been there as a layer. And so now you end up with a second surface here. And you can see that hint I put in about how this one had to have come first, so this one could cut it off. It's a clear hint of time and action. Then what we can see, and this is a little harder to see because there's not a lot of it left, is that there seems to be another layer of sediment put down that sort of follows this angle again. Now again, this is probably some sort of water channel or shoreline, and lines came in this way. Well, starting at the bottom, sediment came in, filled all this. Now as an artist, it's easier for me to draw like this, so I'm just going to tip the paper for ease of drawing, no other reason. Just to get lots of nice layers in this sandstone. So as an artist, this is something that I have seen asked of other artists, is that there are certain ways of moving your hand that are easy and more difficult. The reason this is more difficult is because you have less control this way, and most artists draw from their elbow. So you'll see I don't often move my wrist, I'm often moving my whole hand. So anyway, there we go. So we had this layer got eroded, this layer got eroded, now we have a new layer. But again, we can see that's been changed. That last curved layer has come in. And it's interesting because it's cut into two layers. It's almost as if there was some kind of scour, some kind of removal that actually took away a little bit of this second layer, the second set of bedding that had been there, and a little bit of that third set of bedding. Creating our third boundary. Pretend that's straight. And leaving this wedge, which is a little trickier to see in the original rock. You have to just catch a few little hints of lines there that are there. And then the bedding in this one settled in this way. Now this pattern, where it's sort of a face-on U shape in the sandstone, it's a very clear indication of a tidal set of water. So this is the tides changing and the water shifting levels as it built up over time. Again, just turning this because it's easier for me to draw it this way. And these carried on. So these actually would have carried on, you know, off and big. But then, of course, the stonemasons would have come and gone ka-chunk, 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 and taken off to make a block. And we are left, whoops, with our sandstone building block of local sandstone in the Whitby Harbour and river area. This was laid down first, this was laid down second, this was laid down third, this was laid down fourth, and the builders put it in the wall that way. So here's another example of a stone in the Whitby Abbey wall. You can see this sandstone is a little bit more sort of earthy colored in tone. And the first things I notice, this will be the quick rough at the beginning, the first thing I notice is you've got the stone like that. I can see a nice big kind of diagonal going from the middle up near the top. I can see these, you know, some curving layers here. They get quite close together down here. I can see here lots of, you know, they vary a little bit, but they're fairly steady directional lines. But if I look closer, what I can see is there's a hint of a line here, just a hint where actually this stone here is smoother. But it clearly breaks the lines you can see in the stone here. It's clearly breaking there. And if you look really carefully, it's breaking these lines here as well. This seems to go all the way down with its, if I just erase those, this is very smooth up here, but towards the bottom we do get a hint of kind of some direction of pattern. And there may also be this with a bit of a curve. However, it's a bit unclear. I would need a better picture because some of these lines do seem to maybe follow a curve. So whether this is a second area from this, or just a continuation where the sediment shifted a little in the way it was settling down, I'm not sure. But what we can tell is because this has cut off here and here, it had to have come after. So both of these had to have come first, and this had to have come next. Which means the stone is this way, because this would have been laid down. These lines got broken off by this, and then these lines. So if I draw this from the beginning, what we have is probably some lovely little sort of swaley, hummocky lines. They seem to even out. This one's probably a bit too curved. They seem to have a little gentle kind of incline and then even out this way. So again, we're talking, you know, edge of a shoreline or riverbed of some sort. A little tidal area. And then this had some sort of erosion event. So something came and went, shoo, it's going to cut that off. Took away some of the sediment, leaving a new surface. Erased a bit too much there, leaving a new surface where we can see these little curved lines meet that new surface. Then, a bit later, new sediment is laid down, and this seems to be a very similar angle. It's not too far off, but more closely follows this little surface it's been laid down on. And new rock is laid down. Now I'm going to say that this, where I was saying, you know, is this an extra one down here? I'm going to say it's not. So what I'm going to say is that what happens, because I can't tell for certain and I may be wrong, is that this sediment sort of laid down, but maybe over time maybe the flow changed slightly, so it started shifting a little bit into a curve towards the top of its bedding, which isn't unlikely. And I could be wrong. This could actually be a new layer of bedding that I can't see the boundary between them in the stone because it's quite eroded and soft, that surface. So again, here's our first surface. And then something erodes this direction. Oops, not quite like that. This direction, a little bit further. And you see what happens is, so it takes off that last bit of bedding, but it also just erodes into that first set of bedding here as well, leaving a little bit of those cut off at the same time. And this is where it's quite smooth on the rock we're looking at. And that's probably just because the rock is worn away quite a lot, the surface of this rock. But it looks like what's happened is some new bedding of some sort has gone down. There's a hint of a curve, but it's a little hard to tell. But it would have come in from down here because this is the new surface, so the surface would have built upwards. I just draw it from that way because as an artist it's easier to draw down to up for me. And this would have filled with new surface. So in the rock this would have kept going. This would be new surface. And then the stonemason would come, chop the block, leaving us with the building block that we see here. Except that then he put it in the wall that way. Now there are many rocks that are right side up. And to be fair, I have picked two that were upside down because I think it's important to show how looking for these areas where lines are cut off is your really, really big hint to what had to have come first. If something's cut off, it must have come before the thing that cut it off. That's the sequence of events. And that is our which way up game. So you can take a sketchbook to any old historic building, and if it's made of limestone or sandstone or shale or mudstone, you might be able to see actual patterns of bedding, and you can try and work out if the stones are in the building the right way up or upside down. I hope that was useful, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.